So let's just have a Q&A, and I'll do some demonstrations on how to detail models and this other stuff. And it's going to be the same techniques with a little twist, maybe. And you know, after a while, you're going to see that the approach is pretty much the same. You lay out horizontal lines, you create profiles, you create terrains, you use linear templates on the edges, you clip or not clip. So, I mean, the sidewalk curb ramps are, it's really just adding some additional points on a sidewalk to drop down. I'll show you that. I can show you the transitions, that little thing there, how that works, maybe. I can show you where we have some recorded webinars on detailing out some stuff like, we have some white papers specifically on the restricted turn lane median condition, where you don't just have one thing in the median, you have two. You know, when you have a pork chop or whatever, you actually have at the same location two different traffic separators with a lane in between them, and that can be tricky. Transitions where ramps peel off of an interstate, you know, they become independent for a while, and that little gore area starts twisting on you, and you got to be careful about the cross slope on that. So we have that kind of detailed out. Roundabouts, of course. How do you handle the model roundabouts? It's pretty much a series of linear templates. Once you have your controlling lines through the roundabout, it's not just the center lines of the four legs. You got to have a profile on the radius. You got to have profiles on each of the returns that go from one point to another. You know how to do transitions. Yeah, it's
now,
not just two things.
Couldn't you do? I'm just thinking off the top of my head, but couldn't you do a roundabout with a corridor running around the center island?
It is. Yep. Well, technically.
I mean, you'd have a lot of gaps for each leg, but
because for the apron you can go one way, and for the pavement you can go out to the edge of the pavement about as far as you go with it.
You're right. Yeah, and then the curved. Yeah, the each corner would have to be a linear template.
Yep. And then there's a little area.
And then you have the legs.
And then you've got the median island is usually tapers out. So what you do is you actually just model the pavement separate, and then you come in and you have the definition of the median. You just run a curve, just like we could do that too with that little island. You just run a curve around that inside to the inside. Once you have the curve, now you have the top of curve line, and it's a 3D element in your model. You just select that and say that's a terrain. Just like you did with the intersection boundary, where you had to build every little piece. When you do a curve around an inside island, the top line, the top point of your back curve is a 3D line. So you just select that line and say, that's a terrain, and there's sod in there, or it's concrete in there.
Oh, but looking at the inside, I was trying to still bind the lid to the edge of pavement.
Now we're on the back of curve, the very top. That is just a surface.
So now you can just make that flat and be.
And then give it either a surface template as sod or as concrete, whichever one you're going to use.
Right now,
it gets a little tricky if you're going to walk across it, and do you need to have curb cuts in the island, or that type of thing. And then you just got to use that method there when you transition down, and then put a sidewalk across your island. So those are the things that you end up with in roundabouts usually. We've got two really good recorded webinars on modeling, laying out with 2D smart geometry and also 3D modeling of roundabouts and all the techniques that you apply on each of those. What are we missing here? Ponds. Ponds are pretty much a corridor based on a known shape, either at the ground that you know is the total shape, or at the bottom that you know, or at an elevation that you want to have. And so you can build a pond anyway. You can build it with a berm on the back, a berm on the front. You can have multiple slopes on your, as you're going into the pond. You can put sumps in it after you've built it. So this is all detail modeling kind of stuff. And then, of course, the things that we're probably going to have to create another class for next year, an advanced modeling class, where we cover a lot of these techniques. Because another one is when you are in an area like Tampa Bay and you're redesigning the 275 I-4 connection, and you've got elevations and corridors. You know, there's the study on that one. There's 27 corridors going through that area. 27 corridors, and they're all right next to each other, all independent corridors. Now, what happens when you got two corridors and two walls? You know, you got to be able to tie into each other, right? So those are what we call target aliases, or corridor targets, point controls on other corridors. So those are some techniques that you can take a slope and say, look for this other corridor and find the place where it meets this component 3 feet down from the top of that point. And it'll just go, it'll search until it finds it and it varies that slope. That's one way to do it. You can do all those kind of sophisticated things. And then, so that's target aliasing. There are other things like when, let's say you got two corridors and two slopes coming down, right? They're both searching for the existing ground. You want this one to tie to this one, and then you want this one to stop. But you can't get it. There's a corridor dependency issue going on here, right? You can't search for this line until this line solves. And then once you find that, you want to turn around and say, now this line needs to stop at this line. So we have techniques for finding the seam and having them both search for the same location. So you kind of, it's an iterative process, right? You find where the two meet, and then you target both to that line. So you first build it to the existing, and then you come back and say, all right, that's the line, okay, targets it right there. And it builds a nice seam between two corridors, because that's going to be important when you go to do earthwork files. You can't have, you know, that type of thing. I'm sure there's those.
I know Hamid was also wanting us to cover chapter 10, which I think we've got time to do. So I could go over that after lunch.
Cover that first or second or whatever. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I mean that was using the same model, I think, right? So yeah.
Chapter 10 is very important because it's being left out. That step's being left out a lot for delivery. That's the most important reason why we're doing all this modeling, so we can give it to the contractor.
Yeah, and you know, some people may just think, oh, we're doing this for cross sections. No, it's more than that. We're doing it for automated machine guidance, so we can actually deliver the 3D model. So that's what we should be doing. Anytime we create the 3D model, we should also deliver it. I know in practice it's been only occasionally, but if you need cross sections on a roadway, you're creating a 3D model. So do it right and also deliver it. So chapter 10 is getting deliverables ready for automated machine guidance, and these are the deliverables that are required in the CAD manual. This table here you'll see on page 10-1, that's more or less the same table that's in the CAD manual. Now this is old, so don't go by this table, the CAD manual table, and it's going to be chapter 5. That's the table 5.10.5.2. So all these files are the ones that we need to deliver, or some of these are optional. So we need the alignments and profiles in an land XML format. Optionally, we can have the lines in a DGN or DWG, depending on whether you're producing in Civil 3D or MicroStation. So we're doing MicroStation, so let's say DGN. So that's optional, and then the existing survey, also optional. And the 3D surfaces, the XML is required, but the DGN is optional. So we have the existing surfaces, XML and DGN, and the proposed services the same way, XML and DGN. Now, the XML for the proposed services, we actually have two. the top surface and the bottom surface. So the top surface is your existing finished grade, top of pavement. Bottom surface is like if you're doing milling, that's your whatever your mill depth, that's your bottom surface. If you're doing cut, whatever your cut depth, that becomes your bottom surface. So it's the bottom of any proposed work. That's your bottom surface. So they're able to generate quantities from those surfaces. And also the breaklines are optional to have that DGN file, which is the 3D breaklines that make up the surface.
Is that what top and bottom of mesh means? Like I see that sometimes.
I believe so. I believe that would be the same. The way I don't know that necessarily using that tool that references the top and bottom of mesh, but so we're going to get the Chapter 10 data set, copy that in there. Paste it in your projects folder, replace files. I believe we need the DSGN RD file. Let me check which one we're going to do first. Yes. So we're going to export the alignments first. Now this book, because it hasn't been updated, just has the procedures for doing the top surface. It doesn't have the bottom surface, but we'll see if we can work through doing the bottom surface as well when we get done with these steps. So this is our completed alignment, and you can see it has a little bit more done because they built corridors also for the transition section back to the existing, and that was a kind of an on your own exercise that we didn't go over, but same concepts. Have an intersection there at Friendship Road. It's done. Now this is basically the model that we took and showed on the VR. We have the curb island, the right turn island, sorry, with the ramp going through it. So we're going to go click on the alignment for SR61. It's being really slow for some reason. And you get the context menu, and you're going to go to horizontal geometry report. And what we want is alignments to LAN XML. So this first one in the list here under civil geometry. You should see the XML code over there. And then just go save as. And all our 3D deliverables are to be placed in a 3D deliverables folder. So if you don't have this in your project, when you're doing this, you can create that folder. File type should be XML. And the standard naming. What's that?
No, think of it as text.
Oh, sorry.
Just name the extension XML.
All right, we'll leave that as text, but name it XML. So this name convention comes out of the CAD manual. So it should be AMG, ALGN, and then a number. And say, oh, you can do whatever you want. I guess you can do a 1, do a SR61, .xml.
I don't have that text saved as often.
Did you select the alignment to land XML? So I'll open up the document real quick, make sure it looks like an XML file. Yep, looks good. You can open this in any text editor. I just have Notepad++ because it formats things nicely. But you can open it in a regular Notepad as well. And you can check that it looks like XML. All right, so that's the first alignment. I think we need baseline 98 as well. Same process. So we do the same thing. We'll select the baseline 98, horizontal geometry report, alignments to land XML, and save as AMG ALN. We're going to call this BL98 .xml. Guess the case doesn't matter. So Todd, it doesn't work if you do save as XML. I guess I haven't tried that.
It doesn't read the right format. Verify is a better explanation. It's not the right formatting, is it?
It's an HTML XML versus a land
XML.
Land XML 1.2.
It applies additional conversions that it shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Experience.
Yeah, so we need to
You can also
you can
use the-
make a note of that in your book that you don't save XML as text. No, it says select XML, and that's what I was reading. So you just add the .xml extension. Save as text.
So then the picture goes.
So use text format.
Yeah.
Big note right there.
10-3.
Okay, yeah, so it's in the picture, but it's not in the text. That's all. I was looking at the text. Okay, so that's our alignments. So now we can move on to 10.2.
One thing that you can do to validate these is to go to the FDOT SS4 folder on your desktop and open up the Land XML visualizer tool. And then go to File, Open. Navigate. And it should look like your alignment. And there's also an option to view the profile under Profile View tab at the top. You can't do much here. I mean,
It's very flat, but it is there.
Pardon?
It looks like a Florida profile. It's very flat, but it's there.
You can change the exaggeration a little bit. Or maybe not. But,
Doesn't look like it. It doesn't have a lot of options.
no. But there is data there that.
But yeah, at least you know it's working,
You can look
and
at the
that alignment looks right.
You can look at the stations on the profile view, and that gives you a little bit of an indication that you're in the right ballpark. You know, the elevations, it's not.
So 70 plus or 708 plus 80 rather there. So you can check your elevations and make sure it looks approximately right. I'm not familiar enough with the elevations on this project, but it looks right. So what I was trying to do was just open a single plan view. So you guys can hit Control F1 and do that. And you want to turn construction elements off. Those are already off on mine. You want to turn any references that are showing up off.
Are you on 10.2 or 3?
This is 10.2. And we want to turn off levels for, I'm just going to change this filter to use levels so we can see easier. We went off, sort of by name. This it should be baseline survey, CL construction _ DP, and any scratch levels. We exported the alignment separately, so we don't want them in this file. So you want to turn off anything with _EP, so in this case pavement asphalt EP is on, so you don't want any existing elements in there. It's just proposed. There's no alignment. Then you can place a fence around everything.
And you want to turn off construction lines also.
Yeah, I think I already did.
They look like they're on over there. Construction elements are off, but construction lines apparently are on a different level. There's a couple of them up near the Friendship intersection.
This alignment. I don't know what this is on.
Didn't break TP. That's not right. But yeah, that's a good point. This is what you got to go through is figuring out.
Yeah, so just look at it. I mean, it's so I didn't look well enough at that point, so I should have. Let me get rid of that fence. Start over. So get it nice and clean. Let's see. This is all proposed construction lines. Nothing else. Just 2D. These are our milling lines. We do want those. Edge pavement lines. That's where we're widening to. So yeah, this looks good. So that should be ready to export now.
One other thing that should be checked, and it probably ought to write it in a book, is to make sure that the file has a coordinate system. So you can do it by just going to the actions, set geographic coordinate system.
Yeah, got that.
And just picking on the county where this project is, which is, we'll call it, which is right there. And that will set it. And then file save settings. Let's make sure it's saved. It should be saved to the file. Control F does everything.
All right. So yeah, that is an important point. This doesn't do a lot of good without the coordinate system in there. So make sure you have that. Should be already in this file, but if not, you can set it using the actions and just pick the county. Okay, now we're going to place a fence around everything. We're going to copy the fence contents to a file. I'm going to call this Well, we're going to save it in the 3D deliverables folder. I'm going to call this AMG 2D SGN RD01. Just make sure that matches the naming conventions right here. 2D proposed planimetrics, it does. Now if you have drainage design and pond design, you can do those as well. Just a 2D, it's a similar concept. You clean it up like you do this one. Then data point to accept, and it should have exported that.
So the reason we're doing this is because for automated machine guidance, the equipment that's in the field, they're little tiny screens with little tiny hard drives. So we have to essentially dummy down our files so that it's just basic line work for them when they install it on their, when they load it up on the machines. Right now, and so we're not delivering intelligent model files yet. We're just delivering these files for automated machine guidance. So that is our first goal. Eventually, as their equipment in the field is more sophisticated to handle more intelligent data, then we'll deliver our direct models out of Open Roads and also Civil 3D.
So how do they get the elevations stage like?
So for the 2D, they use that, it's just on their screen, it gives them a 2D perspective of where they're at. Just like your phone when you're driving around, gives you a 2D perspective like where you're at on the project.
Right.
So if they're on a grader, they can see where, if they're in between the lines of the pavement or on the sidewalk or wherever, it gives them a location. As far as the model, the 3D data, that's on another part of the screen, and that comes from the surface data, which we're going to generate and put in that 3D file as well.
You can export this too as a DWG if you want, which that exercise goes on to elaborate on, but I think we can skip that. It's not really crucial. I think we noticed once in a while when you're trying to clean up your model, sometimes it works better to have a DWG format. That was for the 3D one.
File.
Yeah, that was for the 3D file, but for the 2D one, it doesn't really matter. So we're skipping that. So we're going on to 10.3, which now we're going to do the 3D break lines. So now you want to push F2 to get up to 2 views. I'll try to avoid that so we don't crash. Alright, I'll handle. There we go. And you still want the reference files off, so if you are working this file, it should already be off. Make sure everything's off in the 3D view. Yes, it is.
I would also make sure you're in a top view.
Okay, looks like it is. So now that we are hiding all the construction elements, we're going to go to Project Explorer so we can check the design stage. Should be under Civil Model Corridors. So if you click on right click on templates and do properties, you check, okay, this one's already at final design stage. I don't think you can change it from here.
You can if you toggle between the template and then go back to the corridor. It will then show you and you can change it. See the design stages.
All right, so you have to change it from the corridor.
But when you first
But
select
you can't
the
select
corridor-
properties on the corridor. So.
No, you
That's tricky.
have to toggle back and forth between those two properties.
Okay.
When you first look at the corridor, it won't show you any properties until you hit template. And then you can go back to corridor. And it shows you.
And this was also final. So they're both set to final, but if they're not, this is the time they need to be at final.
Now, let's say you wanted to look at the properties of the corridor boundary. You open up Project Explorer, you go into the design file, you find your corridors, and then if you had your element info on, go ahead and do Control-I, or just click that open. So if you click
See
on the
nothing.
corridor, there's nothing. So if you open up the corridor and look at a template, it's going to give you properties. Now if you go
I can't
back to
edit
the
this.
corridor,
You go back here.
now you see the corridor setting.
All right, so those are set to final, and we have this set to top view in the 3D. So we need to clean up the 3D a little bit. We need to make sure all the construction elements are off. They are. No, I'm going to see if this function key works. Yes, it works. So you press F9, it turns off all the component mesh solid elements. So you're left with just the breaklines. And it won't turn it back on, but it will turn it off.
F10 does.
Well, that makes sense. I could do the same key. So F10 if you need to get back on.
All that's really
F9
that
to get it
function
on.
key is doing, it's going through and it's doing levels on, star.px, levels off, star.px, and then it adds the bottom
So
PMs.
anything with the P.
We're trying to leave on all the PM lines except for the bottom PMs. Is what we're trying to do. So,
Okay.
but then there will be other lines that you need to turn off. So, I mean, that was the first attempt. The idea is you got to know what on what level and make sure that you just got the top 3D lines.
Yeah, this one we're trying to just do the top, so that's something to check. That would just have the top lines.
So if you just go through the use level list, if you hit your F9, it's going to turn off all the PXs. Right?
Yeah, so those are already turned off because I pushed F9.
And then if you just look at the rest that's in the list and say, do I want construction lines on? No. Do I want construction line PMs on? No. Contours? No. Minors? No. Curb flow lines? Yes. DTM?
We don't want the CO
DTM
construction.
triangles? No.
Or the baseline.
Yep, no baseline. And just, all you should end up with are PM lines that make up the top surface.
So anything that's not PM should all be turned off. Scratch should be turned off.
Scratch, all those, yep.
Looks right.
Yep. So then if you look at the 3D lines, it should look kind of like the 2D lines, only 3D, right? And there isn't any extra ones anywhere. If you look at this intersection, you might want to turn off the driveway PM lines because it looks like there's some brake lines. The other intersection, sorry, Friendship. Like, see those driveway PM lines? Those probably aren't necessary. Or the center line again, that pavement brake. The pavement brake is just that, it's a brake line down the middle of that intersection. You could keep that, but those driveway lines, you probably don't need those.
The driveway PM is also going to turn off these driveways. Isn't it? Do we need them? Yeah, I guess we don't need them. But there's lines here too. So driveway PM is off.
And you can also rotate it after you've got it, just to look at it to see if it looks decent or not.
Yeah, let's put it on isometric view and make sure that nothing looks out of place vertically. Should all be in 3D. If you got anything at elevation 0 that's way down here, and shouldn't be in that model, you need to get rid of it.
This is one of the things we try to deliver to the contractor is just the top surface, because that's what they usually build off of is the top surface. And so we give it to them two different ways. One is through 3D Breaklines, the other one is an actual mesh.
So I noticed these 3D lines did not get trimmed. So do you think that's an issue?
So
The
remember when
contractor.
I said I don't think the clipping tool clips,
Clips the 2D, or it clips
Clips
some of them,
the
but it doesn't
3D
clip
lines.
this one apparently.
but this data set was generated in a previous version. So like I said,
Oh yeah,
maybe
that's,
they
that's
fixed
probably
that.
the issue. So these weren't clipped. These others were, but this one's not.
So you would want to make sure you go back to the model and make sure those are clipped properly. Or we can show you a technique to go in and do it manually after you've created the extra file. You can save it to a DWG, go in and edit them, and then deliver it.
Yeah, so we'll export it like this and then play with it some more. So best way is probably going to be zoom extents, and then we can fence everything in the 3D view. Copy the contents to the file. This one's also in 3D Deliverables folder, like everything else. It's going to be AMG-3DSGN RD01.
I just copy the one that's up there and change one letter.
That works too.
Right, Tom?
It's a lot easier.
We started 99.
I'm going to change it because I didn't have caps lock on apparently. Accept to save that, and you
save
should.
it as DWG or DGN?
That's a DGN, so we need to do is DWG now as well. So that one is save as, and we're going to change the save as type to Autodesk. Oops, that's not right. It is file save as, yeah. Thought we were copying the fence contents. No. It depends if you do it. If you can open the DGN and do save as,
Yep.
but I think if you copy the fence contents, can you save that as a DGN, DWG? No, it doesn't let you.
Try it.
Nope, doesn't let you. DGN only. So we got to open up.
That answers that.
Type it in. Or DWG at the end.
Well, it only says in this, say it only gives you MicroStation as a file type. So it's not going to convert it, no matter what you call it. In that dialog, it's not going to convert it. So you have to save as. I'm trying to open the 3DSGN RD, so open that one, and then you can save as, because you want the 3D breakline file that's been cleaned up. File, save as, saving that to DWG, same file name, click save. Units should be survey feet. And it's opening the DWG. You should see the blue icon down here that shows you in DWG work mode. And everything changes color because it's DWG, so it's speaking a different language now.
Why'd you change color like that, Todd?
Different color table. DWG mode.
So we want to do is just basically trim this line, right?
Yeah, you
We can use the regular MicroStation tools for this, right?
Yep, that's, for some reason you can't use MicroStation tools on a MicroStation 3D file, but you can on a DWG file.
All right, so let me see if the trimmed element will work. Oops, wrong side. Over here. Trim that there. And that's it. Those lines are cleaned up. Now they're not cleaned up very well though. Why is that?
Because they're 3D lines, they might not intersect.
Oh, it just clears it to the nearest vertex, doesn't it?
Is that what it is? That's the
think
way
so,
I
it
was
does.
just usually just delete vertexes till I get it to where it's close. That's a pretty big gap.
Can't I just like snap? Theoretically, that'll stay in the snap to the 3D position, right?
Yep.
So could also do that. Just be aware that that is potentially changing the elevation of that
The other
line.
thing you can do is extend it, trim to extend, and just go near. The idea is to try to get clean line work before you get to this stage.
Yeah, if I hit extend, I might be able to get a little closer. Just don't feel like I'm meeting the end of that. Oops. See, I went too far. These lines should match up in 3D. They should be at the same point. But that's something to keep in mind. You're working with 3D lines, so.
If you rotate the view, you might be able to see.
Yes. Might be able to.
Now they match up. A lot better after.
Just can't get mine to the beginning point for some reason.
So use the, which extender are you using?
Just the extend line. There's still a little bit of overlap.
So use the,
So I was using this one.
let's see, extend line, yeah. And start at the very end and just slide it back.
I was trying to snap. Now it lets me snap. Didn't want to let me snap before. It's still not quite the end. Need to go a little farther back.
You get the idea.
Here we go. Got it.
Got it.
So sometimes a little bit of tentative clicking will help. The right-left chord. See if I can do the same thing with this guy. That's it. Yeah, got right on it. And that one's okay. Any other straight lines? This one's a pavement break, so we want that line, right?
Yep. Do you have a gap between your radius line? Yeah, you do. In the back of driveway line there, see that gap?
Yeah. But a problem?
I wouldn't know how to create a triangle there. You can easily close it just by going to Alt and picking on a line, set that level of pavement, that's what PM.
Then we can draw a line.
You really should put this in your model, but if you're doing cleanup work, you could just do it that way.
Yeah, that's the proper thing is to fix this in your model first, but since we're showing you how to fix this, if there's some minor stuff like this, that
Because Trimble will throw
you can
errors.
fix it here.
Trimble, any of the software that you load into, will throw errors in these areas. Well, mainly when they're crossing. Not necessarily when there's gaps, but when they're crossing. It doesn't like when two lines intersect directly above one another, or if they're crossing. Two elevations don't work on a terrain model, right?
Yeah.
It would be one XYZ location. So if you think about it, there's possibly two Z elevations on when you do that. Or if you do this. So everything has to be pretty clean, or else it'll throw errors. It will still it'll pick a point to create a surface from internally. But then it'll throw you an error. It'll say there's an extra, I don't know, what's the error it says? Do you remember, Tom?
Just a flag.
Just flags them, yeah.
Just gives you a flag.
Construction flag.
I would encourage you guys to submit these files. It sure doesn't hurt because it helps anybody that's reviewing, even if the contractor doesn't necessarily need that file, but it certainly helps reviewing because it's a lot easier to look at DWG or DGN versus looking at an XML. So assuming whoever's reviewing it has AutoCAD or MicroStation, they can open either one of those. And we're going to just work right here in this file. Make sure you have the DGN file open. These lines are really close together, but I guess it's not a problem. They're not overlapping. So we need to go to Terrain Model under Civil Tools. And we're going to use Create from Elements. Type Breakline. Edge method is max triangle length. Now max side length. This is a max triangle side, right? So this is going to be.
I would just use none. We're going to fix them anyway. I don't think I would use that. Max triangle.
Oh, okay.
If you do use it, just use it your interval size for the triangle length, which would be like 10 or 15, something like that. Just if 10 is your interval and it could potentially be a little wider around the curve, then you could
this would keep it from the max triangle length would keep it from drawing triangles like say from here to here.
Yes.
So
but it's still going to put triangles outside the break lines, which is what the next step will do with the cut fill lines.
So we'll do
that's
none.
why I say you're gonna take care of them anyway with none.
And we're gonna set this up. Terrain display DTM proposed. We're gonna call it AMG. AMG 3 service PRO1. And then we need to select all the elements, which I probably should have done first, because now I got to redo it. All right, so select all your elements first, then run the Create from Elements tool. Everything is set up the same way, except
Now, if you turn your construction, well, you might have to turn on a level one to see it.
Well, I need my 3D view open. I want to see it.
Oh, you should be in a 3D file, so you don't necessarily have to have a 3D view open. You are in a 3D file.
Oh,
You just
okay.
need to turn the DTM PX levels on.
There's my triangles. Looks ugly. You do not want your model to look like this, because you don't need triangles from here to here. So that's what we had to clean up now. And if you have a really long project, it just adds a whole lot of data and will make your file huge as well.
So I would just turn everything off and turn on cut fill only.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it. So we want fill PM, cut PM. So that would be, those are our boundaries. Now, this is a good check as well, because you should only have one cut and fill line. I've seen some projects and I was like, why do you have more than one cut and fill line? So how do you know what it is? So that represents an issue. Yeah, an issue with your corridors. Probably need to do a clipping reference, something along those lines. So this is a good check here as well. You know, if you have multiple lines, it's not going to show up right either.
Multiple lines as overlapping?
If they're multiple parallel lines, even if they're not crossing, but we got a line on each side, that's all you should have at most.
Yeah, these like your limits of construction lines, right?
Yeah. This is where, yeah, I mean, this is your daylight line. This is the edge of any construction that's happening. Like, I question this right here. It looks like a stray to me. That shouldn't be there.
It should be cleaned out. You might be able to do it with the...
probably a clipping artifact.
Yeah, you might be able, now that you brought it back in from a DWG, you might be able to just extend it. Yeah, you can clean that up.
All right, let's do that then.
Just delete that one vertex.
Kind of just did delete vertex.
Yep.
Oh, there we go. We clean that up. This one's got the same problem, and this is where this corridor was clipped, so I can see why that's happening. I don't know if there's a way to clean that particular issue up in the model though, because it's already clipped there. Otherwise, looks pretty good. Yeah, it's all right. So we need to select, see if we can select all these levels first and then run the tool. I had to find out where the tool is.
It's the stickball tool.
That doesn't help. I don't know what a stickball is. It's in here though, right?
Third
terrain model.
Middle one that looks like a stick.
Oh, okay. Change feature type. So look for the stick in the ball, or 2/3 of a division sign. And we need to change that to boundary. And so we're setting the cut and fill to be our boundary. So everything looks good, except that.
And you won't see it do anything until you turn the DTM triangles and the PX. The triangles in the DTM PX level. And now.
We got a couple extra pieces though.
Shame on you.
That's probably because there's so many holes here.
Oh, it's got across there. Well, in that case, now you can.
This is a boundary too, though, so I don't know why it's doing that. But
It's because it's stretching across. You see how you've got.
it's going from here to here, right?
Exactly.
So that's a boundary.
Yep.
So it doesn't know what to do with this line on.
So.
I mean, if you're, one way to do it would be to extend this, right?
Yes.
In your model, I would do it in your model.
Yes. So let's say that.
That's why I was wondering about this whole thing.
Turn on your DTM triangle again. All right. So let's say you have this situation. You would like to deliver this terrain without these extra triangles. So what you can do is if you click on the triangle edge and wait for the context menu to come up, you can slide over to where it says rule, and you can take off the rule. So that makes it available for editing. Not that you're going to eat it, but you're going to change it. Editing. So then you can go to the edit tools, edit terrain model tools, which if you look in your terrain model tools on your taskbar, there is a wrench on the second row. Edit is always wrench. So second row in the terrain tools, there's a third from the right. That one. If you do edit terrain, it brings up a tool set dialog over here. And the one on the second from the right is called delete triangle by line. Second from the right. So if you click that one, it'll ask you which terrain. It'll ask you in the prompt down at the bottom. So you click on the terrain, and then you can draw a line across those triangles. Exactly. And it will trim those out.
And I need it here too. Oops. Let me get these.
Yeah, so then once you have that terrain, what do you do next?
Oh, this is it. Look at that.
That's the problem. Yeah.
This is the boundary, so that's weird. Well, it's weird because I deleted this triangle. Otherwise, it would be here. I deleted a few triangles in here. A couple right here.
How did you do that? It's because it doesn't finish.
You just turned on the boundary only.
Boundary. So that's why you couldn't delete
You go to
that.
properties on the terrain.
Getting confused.
Show them how to get rid of the triangles and just look at the boundary.
You can turn on DTM triangles, but leave DTMPX on. DTMPX shows the boundary. DTM triangles shows the triangles. Can't have the triangles on without the boundary though.
Yeah, that's what it's trying to do. That's pretty bad, isn't it?
It should go like that.
I mean,
Not.
this should be the boundary, so
Oh, you know what happened? You use two lines as boundaries. So it used up to one edge and over to the other. That's the best thing I can.
So if we clean this up by extending this line, extending these lines, or maybe even closing the shape, that would probably be the better way, and it would actually recognize this as a boundary line. So that's probably what we should have done. But that's probably best done in the model as opposed to doing it in here. So that's just something to to keep it clean. That would help.
Definitely.
And we still got a couple straight lines here. That might be able to delete those.
Yeah, you probably can.
Actually, it's more than just a couple. There's a whole bunch of triangles in there. Let's see if it'll let me delete them.
Pick the triangle. Yeah,
Yeah, that one behaved nicely, but the other one is got that unique geometry, and that's causing some issues, causing overlap issues to be precise. But even these triangles here, I mean, I question the accuracy on this edge because you didn't close this.
Yep.
We have profile information here, but we don't have any information here. It's not going from here to here. It's going from here to here.
If you're going to resurface, you probably would have a seam line in there.
Yeah. So
you should have
if you clean up your corridor a little better, you should have things clipped here or wherever your seam is, whether it be here or here. You need it drawn the whole way. There's similar issues here, really.
It's a little bit of QC actually, is what it is.
I think we're going to leave that for now because we don't want to redo our data set. But so we know it's got a couple issues.
You do need to save that terrain to an XML.
Yeah, that's the next step. So I need to turn that back on. Which is my tool. So you get the context menu, make sure your triangles and your PX are on, hit the context menu, third button over, you can export to land XML. Let's see, we're going to call this AMG 3. This. I'm going to just double check the CAD manual here. 3D proposed surface, yeah, AMG3 surface PR. The bottom surface is EW. Description, we're going to call it proposed surface. Going to export both. And it should be saving the 3D deliverables folder. So now we got a new XML file, and I'm going to open up the land XML visualizer. Let's just have a look at that. Make sure we didn't break anything too badly.
So you can turn off some of that stuff on the bottom left. You can turn off fill triangles and vectors and clean it up a little better. And also, if you just set it on default instead of spectrum, and it's showing all those elevations.
Yeah, how do we turn that off? Or can we?
If you drill into the surface, keep going, there it is under where it says points. I think you can right click on it and hide the points. There you go.
Alright, that's a little cleaner. So hit our points, now we only see our triangles.
And break lines.
Right, triangles and break lines. But yeah, it looks okay. It looks like what we just exported. You know, other than we have these little issues right here.
And that's kind of what Trimble's going to get, or AgTech or TopCon. That's what they're going to see on in their software. That's what they're going to build it from.
And you
And
can see that.
if you look at the size of those files in comparison to what our design files are, you'll notice they're considerably different, obviously. So this 3 AMG XML file is basically 3 megabytes, 3,000 kilobytes, whereas the design file is 7. That's just the design file, 7 megabytes. So I mean, it's still pretty big.
Yeah, mine's 4,000 kilobytes.
Yeah, compared to your design file.
Design is 7,000. Yep.
And even the 3D lines, what is the 3D size of the 3D lines file? To me, that's like one, that's even smaller.
You know, I'm looking at this and it feels like there's a break here, so I think this might be what's causing the problem. Look at all these triangles right here. There should not be that many triangles. There's some kind of break in the surface. So it probably has an issue with our quarter model.
Actually, no. What that is, if you look at the middle crown, there's some extra points in the middle of the pavement, probably. That it tries to triangulate that edge too.
So it just happens to have more points. You know, the designer is the one that knows the project the best. So usually, you know, you may have a better idea of why it's doing what it's doing. So I didn't design this project, so I don't have a good idea on some of these things. I'm just guessing by looking. All right, let's go on to an existing surface. Now for that one, we need to be in the DSGNRDO1 file, I believe. So let's open that up. I want to hit F2 if you don't see two views. And we want to turn on the existing ground with GDTM RDO2. I think we want that on in the 2D view.
You could do it.
It doesn't matter.
Nope. All you're gonna do is export.
Yeah, so we're just doing the same tool where we export to my XML. So click on the boundary, select the export icon. And we gotta call this, I think it's through service EX. So let's change that PR to EX. Oops. And let's change this to existing surface. Okay. And the file name should be that as well, EMG3 surface EX. Just gonna double check the CAD manual, but I believe that's a standard. Yep. .xml. And that should be over here now. We'll take a look at that one real quick in Land XML Visualizer. Now this one's usually bigger because it has all the existing ground. No, it's not bigger, but it probably has fewer triangles. Less detail than we have on the quarter model. So let's get rid of these points. So yeah, that one looks about right. I mean, this one we hopefully shouldn't have to fix because hopefully the surveyor delivered it correctly. Fingers crossed. Hopefully. Because if they didn't, our whole project's built on this, and our whole project's probably messed up anyway.
So what I would show people is if you open up the template library.
But the procedure should be similar to what we see in 10.3.
But in order to illustrate it, I would open up the template library and show them the point definitions on the template that creates those lines.
So this is your bottom, so you can see the feature definition, bottom PM. This is also bottom PM, so anything that's on the bottom surface. This is not. Guess this is fill. No.
So places where you have caves like that.
It's bottom PM.
Yep.
So you expect everything along the bottom surface here, all these points, to have that bottom PM feature definition. Yeah, looks like it does. So that's how we're going to get the bottom surface. But yeah, so this, what were you going to say about the caves? This is a bit of an issue.
Yeah, you can't let it create caves, so you'd have to go in and make sure that this point next to the curb was not using bottom PM. Just call it we're gonna have to have a different name for that. For now, you could, if there's a scratch PM.
The curb bottom out is what you're saying needs to change?
Yeah.
Or
Yep.
that one can't be bottom PM because that'll create a cave.
They're miscellaneous.
When we say curb PM, no, that's going to make it the
That's
post.
gonna be a top. Huh?
We almost have to have
Curb
like,
base PM, that's about right.
You could do that.
But it is the top of the curb base.
Yeah. I mean, it technically is a curb bottom.
But
Bottom.
it coincides with the top of the curb base.
We don't have a curb bottom PM, so for now that would be good enough. Curb base. Just so that you could exclude it from the other 3D points, right?
Oh, this one's also showing as bottom PM. I don't know why this one is.
So those you definitely want to change them.
So we need to go through that other ITL. This is what Terry was talking about, wasn't it?
Yes.
We haven't decided what we want to do.
Yes.
Yep.
I'm waiting for Trimble to be able to accept an intelligent model.
It does.
You know, it doesn't. I mean, it does, but it's too much.
Well, Trimble can accept an I model, right?
That unfiltered ICM file.
The problem is that nobody else can.
And the problem is it's
So pretty
unfiltered.
key, yeah.
There's too much data in there for contractors to decipher.
Okay.
So I would put those on curb base for now until we come up with something else.
All right, so this is very much in development areas. There's a lot of changes happening rapidly, so this is why you see that our templates really aren't set up.
I mean, up
properly
until
for this
recently,
yet.
we were only requiring the top surface be created. So if you've got to create a bottom surface, then you're going to do it from these points.
So this is bottom PM, but the one straight above it, shouldn't that be bottom PM as well, or not? That's what I'm sitting here wondering.
Yes.
Will that create any problems? Okay, so the pavement bottom is also bottom PM. That one should not be. We need to change that.
This is, yep.
Pavement base PM, maybe?
Yep. So there may be a little bit of template maintenance to do. Obviously, on this quarter, there's only one template, so there's not a whole lot of maintenance to do. But you see the concept. We're trying to differentiate the point definitions just to build the bottom at one time. And we haven't written up the exercise for it, so John Mark wants to go through it and see. That's why I said it's as easy as just selecting all the bottom PMs, as long as you.
Yeah.
But the tough part is getting the bottom PMs. I didn't realize it was going to be that much.
Yeah.
So you guys are the guinea pigs on this. Sorry. Now, on some of these, isn't there presumed cut and/or fill, if necessary, between this space and the existing ground? So that cut becomes the bottom PM. So then don't we have
In
two
the
bottoms? Yeah,
No.
say in the median.
There's never going to be cut in the median. It's always going to be crowned or flat between two elevations. Now, in the case where you've had a ditch in the median, yes.
Compared to the existing ground, you're either cutting or filling, because there's no way this meets the existing ground.
No.
So you're either cutting or filling to build that
So
median.
here's the question. Are you trying to build one contiguous bottom surface or two roadway bottom surfaces?
I don't know. That's the question.
That is a question, because if you're trying to create one contiguous, you're going to have redundant surfaces.
Yep.
So it would be my objective to just build the unique bottom surface underneath the sidewalk, underneath the pavement, underneath the curb. And if the curb is next to the pavement, then it would be one contiguous for curb and pavement. The sidewalks could be separate surfaces if you wanted. Or, because otherwise you're going to have redundant lines, on your redundant surface lines, right? If you try to pick up the fills and the top of it, and then the utility strips and all that.
But theoretically, the bottom is supposed to include cut and fill, yes?
The bottom?
Yes.
The bottom should just attach to the proposed. And here's the other caveat to that, is that we bid optional base and optional pavement in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
So what we have in our template is one depth.
One option.
One option.
Yes.
So why would the contractor, if he's using a different option, use our bottom surface? Why wouldn't he just take our proposed and say, I'm using option 10, that's always 11.6 inches below my top. Where's my top?
He probably wouldn't use it for his automated machine guidance. He might use it for quantities, because if he knows which option we use to calculate, he can then calculate whatever option he wants to choose.
See, what they can do is they can load in our top surface, load in our bottom surfaces, and then say, and load our existing and say, what is the difference between the bottom and the existing? Or the bottom and the top minus the bottom surface. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We have to give them that in order so they can exclude out what is other paid quantity. Now there's another way that we could test, since we're all just testing now. If you go up to that, if you go up to your corridor in the 2D view, there's one of the corridor design stages is bottom surface, which would be easy enough, except it's not a composite bottom surface. It's only a corridor bottom surface.
Right.
So that's another option. Which is why I would use the 3D lines. But if all you had was a single corridor, it'd be really easy. We didn't necessarily cover it either. So this method of trying to set up your template to have unique bottom points, that's one option. If you look at the template library, another option is what's called alternate surfaces. So if you double click on a point, let's say the bottom point, you'll see there's an alternate surface option. on a point. Like that one right there. And right now it probably says stabilization, okay? So you could put that same alternate surface on all points that you wanted to be your bottom surface. See what I mean?
Yeah.
And then there's an option in the tools under corridor to create alternate surfaces, which is, I believe we're going to have to write up the best procedure for this. I don't know if there's a best one. If it were me, I probably would go in and work through the points or create the alternate surface.
Okay, there's no overlapping points there, so it's just around the curve where I have overlapping points. So I think I'm almost done.
You are.
So I'll go ahead and do it this way. What do we call this curve base?
Oh, it's in the
Traffic separator.
It's the last one on the top row.
This is one of those areas, actually, that I would say Civil 3 probably is a little easier to do. You can generate a bottom surface in like 2 clicks.
For the whole contiguous?
The corridor. For the
by
corridor.
By corridor.
By corridor.
You can do that very easily by going to the stages and going from final to bottom surface. Done. But when you're trying to do it for the whole contiguous corridor, you know, we have 1, 2, 2, 3, 4 plus a surface template, you know. There's a lot of pieces to the puzzle here.
Mm-hmm.
Which may be good enough to just deliver bottoms by corridor. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I guess because you build it differently in Civil 3, you really are building everything by the corridor.
So instead of a single corridor, it's a project, a contiguous project, and then you build pieces of a project in their own little sections. Is that what you're saying?
Theoretically, if you wanted to, you could have one corridor for the whole project. If you wanted to, it would just be one corridor. It's often easier to set it up with multiple, but
right.
They can still respect each other and not have overlap.
Is it via one alignment? Or via... Typically, you do corridors per alignment, right? Like in MicroStation.
Don't want to get into how I'm doing that. Okay, so we have our bottom PMs labeled correctly. So let me go ahead and synchronize this up.
It goes by where you have that label on in the template. So that isn't a way, it's an option to do it that way.
I'm just doing the SR61, so I guess we're not going to do the other one for now. All right, so it's processing. Okay, so we were just trying to work through some of these, but so basically I fixed the bottom lines. So then I came in here into 3D, into my 3D view, and turned off everything but the bottom PM level. So I'm going to just demo that. So I have bottom PM as active, so turn it all off. And since I didn't, I should fix it for the whole file for every corridor. And it's not fixed for Triple R98 and some of these others. So there's going to be some overlap in the linear templates and then 98. So really the only thing that's going to look right is is this section. So I'm just gonna select the lines that are part of this corridor. Since I know the others don't look right, okay, looks like that's it. And then we're going to export that into a
Create a
3D.
terrain. Go to terrain, create from elements.
I could do that in this file, okay?
Yep.
Terrain model.
Well, I mean, if you want to put them in their own file, you would then file fence them, right? Like you did the other.
Yeah. And maybe that's what I should do.
Yeah.
To do it right. We'll just do a fence instead.
And that fence will use overlap. Then you can save those to a file. And if you got to edit that file, you can go in and edit it.
The no fence has an extra.
So I'm going to call it
DOT.
yeah, we'll call it SO61 BOT. Yeah, you got the pieces I wanted. So.
And left the one you didn't.
Oh yeah, I didn't want these because we used overlap. I'm not sure whether the civil cell has extra lines. I think it's alright. Because we had a quarter clip right there. Some overlap happening there because of the nose. Is that going to break it?
Let me think, do you need that? You don't need that.
One's on the pavement, one's on the traffic separator, right?
Oh, yeah. So there's two pavements, yeah.
I bet this is different chords. It's going to different
It's a
chord.
break. It's actually a break in the bottom of the surface. But yeah, those three above, you probably don't need. Yeah.
Yeah,
So you had three lines.
They're not really bottom lines. But this goes into a different corridor. Maybe I shouldn't have selected that one either.
That's better though.
Because this corridor has not been cleaned up. Yeah, there's extra lines there, so I'm going to delete those too.
That template, now you're right.
So you can see there's a lot more lines there. I got duplicates, whereas this one I cleaned up.